Learn how to build a values-driven organization that gets outstanding results. With Tracy Folkes Hanson, the CEO of CSAE, the Canadian Society of Association Executives, on today's episode of the Executive Wins Podcast. Welcome to the Executive Wins Podcast, where senior leaders share their biggest wins so you can get inspired and grow your business. Here's your host, Gordon Shepherd. Welcome to the Executive Wins Podcast, where senior leaders share their biggest wins so that you can get inspired and grow your business. I'm your host, Gordon Shepherd. And to kick off this show, I want to take you to an important life lesson that Michael Baczynski, the CEO of Buzzworthy Marketing, shared on episode 32. He said that entrepreneurs basically want three things: financial independence, the entrepreneurial freedom to use your time the way you want, and finally, impact. And here's what he had to say about impact. If you sit on your deathbed and you can't quantify the impact that you left on this world, well, you're going to be the saddest person when you take your last breath. Isn't that a great reminder for all leaders? If you sit on your deathbed and you can't quantify the impact that you left on this world, then you're going to be the saddest person when you take your last breath. And one of the ways that you can quantify your impact is by taking action. And you're doing that right now because you are listening to this episode and so many of the other episodes in our back catalog, so you can get inspired and make an impact. Another reason to check out our back catalog, well, the Executive Wins Podcast is the winner of the 2025 Best New Podcast Award in the Quill Podcasting Awards. It's an impact that I am really proud of. And it's also a major factor in helping the Executive Wins Podcast to pass more than 15,000 views on YouTube and more than 13,000 minutes of watch time, along with having over 1,000 downloads on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen. Great leaders sharing their biggest wins so that you can learn and grow your business. That is the impact I want to make with this show. On today's episode, you'll learn how to build a values-driven organization that gets outstanding results with Tracy Folkes Hanson, the CEO of CSAE, the Canadian Society of Association Executives. I also want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by our exclusive workshop called How Senior Leaders Can Get More Wins and Grow Their Organizations. In this high-impact workshop, leadership teams learn how to reverse engineer past wins using a proven 5-step system called the Anatomy of a Win to help them understand the strategy, work plan, people, operations, and results behind past wins. Once they master the system, then they can apply it to get more wins in the future. During this session, leaders also learn how to build a wins list, as well as finding new ways to authentically celebrate with their teams. I'll be your instructor, bringing 25 plus years of experience and a proven system that you can learn to grow the overall results in your business. It's available in half-day, full-day, and customizable formats, and it's really great for team building and corporate retreats. So if you are a leader who really wants to grow yourself, your team, and your business, then visit executivewins.com/workshops to learn more. And now on to today's show. We are lucky to be joined by Tracy Folkes Hanson, the CEO of CSAE, the Canadian Society of Association Executives. It's an organization that's dedicated to helping association leaders raise their game in all areas. You can learn about their work at csae.com. That's csae.com. On this episode, you'll find out why it is so important to establish your values and then use them whenever possible. And not just by putting them up on the wall, but by bringing them up in meetings, by telling the values to the new hires, and by being a beacon for leaders who really want to learn how to build a values-driven organization that gets results. You'll also hear that Tracy didn't impose the core values, but in fact, she developed them alongside her staff. And when they were nearly done, she took them to the board. But not so the board could change them, but to simply get their oversight to see if anything was missing. Can you imagine going to work in an organization where you helped to actually develop the values and then get a chance to practice them? How motivating is that? And that's just one of the high impact takeaways that you're going to get from listening to Tracy today. I also want to remind you that this episode follows a specific format that I created called The Anatomy of a Win to help you learn the strategy, work plan, people, operations, and results behind every business win that you hear on this show. I really do hope that you can use this approach to reach your next business milestone. And now here's Tracy Folkes Hanson with her executive win. Tracy, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Gord. It's great to be here.
Well, we're lucky to have you here because you as a leader in many different roles throughout your life, but now, when you're at the CSAE doing your thing, influencing so many association leaders with all the good programming you run there, your wonderful touch behind the scenes. I've seen you in action at a conference, working your magic with all the different things that you do, all those threads that kind of run through you as the senior leader, and how lucky they are to have you there. I'm going to guess, though, that some people listening maybe haven't met you before. So if you had to describe yourself, how would you describe yourself in the organization that you work for?
Oh, geez, Gord, I always describe myself as an aspiring do-gooder. So that's a little snippet into me. So I am currently the president and CEO of CSAE, which is the Association for Canadian Associations. So when we talk about that, if you think that every industry, every profession, every trade has some kind of an association, the docs have one and the plumbers have one. Well, the people that run those associations, they have one as well, and that's CSAE. So our mandate is to really impart the knowledge and the resources and create spaces for community building for association leaders and professionals across the country.
Well, and it's lucky that you do what you do, because I've actually worked directly consulting-wise with some of the association leaders who participate in CSAE. And I learned about one of the things that you guys have going is an accreditation. It's called the CAE program. Tell us about what that is and why it's important.
So the CAE is a designation. It's Certified Association Executive. It's a pretty rigorous program. We've just morphed from the traditional program, which was a 5-level course that students or those pursuing their designation would take 2, 3, 4, or more years to get through the 5 levels. We've just recently introduced the newer version of that particular program, and it's done now in 5 courses, and those courses take as long as they take, but each course now has a micro-credential. When you finish the 5 and you do your capstone, then you're awarded your CAE. In the former program, you would do the 5 levels consecutively, and at the end, you would write a 48-hour exam. So they're comparable. The content is based on core competencies for association executives, really is the pinnacle or the gold star in terms of being able to run an association or being an association professional. So once they're finished, we refer to our CAEs lovingly, and there are a lot of them. And it is that unique value proposition offered through CSAE. You can't get it anywhere else in Canada. There are versions with other association of associations around the world, but the CAE in Canada can only be got through hard work and determination as a member at CSAE.
And I've spoken with leaders that have done it. I've spoken with leaders that are enormously proud of it and promote it to their staff. The capacity building that you're doing. When I'm going to say, if we call it mini MBA equivalent, or whatever it is, like this is a rigorous program that's getting put into action. And when we think about the impact of associations across Canada, like you said, there's so many. But you can imagine some of them, in the hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of members, having their leaders come through your program to get better at, association leadership leadership overall. What a great gift
Mhm.
that you're providing that platform. What a great gift that you're agile and moving into modern times with the micro credentialing and things that we need to do. You're not stuck back in those old decades and saying, oh, no, this is the way we do it all the time. No, we're going to move with the
Right?
times and make it as good as it can be now. Well, it's funny enough, we could just talk about that all day long. The nice thing
Oh,
is
we
when we
could.
bring senior leaders on the show, I always say, start off with one main question, which is if you had to describe your biggest win in the work that you do in these last couple of years, what would that win be and how would you describe it?
So I've thought about it a lot, Gord, from the perspective of, is it modifying a programming? Is it, hanging on through the great disruptor of certainly my lifetime? Is it based on programming or strategy or any of those things? And when it comes right down to it, my biggest win is really leading through the values that I have set with and for the organization and that I happen to subscribe to myself. And I was at an event last week. We were talking about how do you build a culture, one of curiosity and one of creativity and innovation, and how do you let that happen? And really, you do it by building the foundation or setting the foundation, and the foundation, in my case, and in the case of CSE yesterday, today, and going into tomorrow is really the bedrock of our core values, and they are impenetrable. We do not trade off on our values ever.
You must sleep well at night. You know what I mean? When you've got that type of foundational approach, because what it allows you to do is you know what to say yes to and you know what to say no to. When leaders lead from this place of values, I'm going to have to just dig in here a bit practically for a second. And can you tell me what the values are if you had to sort of say what they were?
Yeah, so they are. You know what? You're gonna. I'm gonna miss one as I'm talking, but I'll pick it up at some point in time. So they're really rooted in creativity and innovation, trust and integrity, leadership, teamwork and collaboration, and inclusivity and diversity. So I didn't actually miss one. They're five, and they're usually roll off pretty well. When individually, if you parse them apart, they all stand alone on their own. When you pull them together, it really creates that solid foundation. And you know, we we created them together as a team at CSAE. We involved the board. We included volunteers, and when we set them, we didn't just set them and walk away from them. We use them often to set up conversations around strategic direction or strategy. We use them when we're developing internally our annual plans, and we use them for the team on a fairly regular basis. So if we're having a monthly team huddle or we're at a team retreat, we talk about the values, and we'll talk about them in ways that are not just what do these mean to you? That's an important conversation. That's important data almost as you're building the team or, strengthening the culture of the team. The other thing that we do is how do you see it in action? Where do you see the values come to play? So it could be that we see a member who's being really collaborative and working on something. It could be, an internal initiative that really digs and dials into inclusivity and diversity. So that's really how you make them come to life. It's not just saying these are the values. The other piece that I should mention, or I'd be remiss if I didn't, is when we created them, they're not just words. There are definitions that we've created for ourselves that support each of those core values. Now, if you ask me for the definitions, I won't give them verbatim, but I can certainly tell you what they all mean.
I think we've got the full intent and we can see the authenticity that you've come to it with. And thank you for describing that process of the organic development of them. That's not you walking in as the leader going, here's the values we're all going to follow. That's
Right.
saying, let's do this together. And the persistence and the over communication that it takes as a leader to sort of run a thorough situation. So you're talking about how many different moments can we implement these? And you described just a few of the settings that you're bringing that to bear every way you go along. It must make the organization stronger. It must also be a beacon of light for other association leaders to see that the association they're a part of is the beacon, you know, sort of gold standard on the value side for practicing those things. And those no's that you come up with, nope, we're not going to do that based on
Right.
these values, will just ring loudly and give everybody that peace of mind as you have that going on over and over. Good. Wow, that's yeah.
And look, as leaders, it is incumbent upon us to listen. If inclusivity is one of your values, then you have to build them in a structure that is inclusive. And if you set it as your foundation, then you have to say, you know, this is what we believe in. This is how we show up, and this is how we show up for each other. This is how we show up for members. This is how we show up as an organization. And to some extent, I mean, we hear often the expression of, you know, lead by example. And at CSAE, that is, you know, we're set up to do that as the Association for Associations. I always somewhat tongue-in-cheek joke that, you know, my members do the exact same job that I do. They run an association. So we're a little bit different in that we're fishbowlish because we run an association and everybody else does as well. It is that continuum of sharing and evolving and growing, um, and yet growing from that very solid place of our core values. So it's deeply rooted.
Deeply rooted, the foundation is what allows that sort of, you know, continued growth to occur, and then that continuity of feeling. How nice when you're onboarding a new person into your organization. How
Right.
nice even if you're offboarding somebody. You know what I mean? There's all these things that would go into play there where these things would be significant. Love it. So we know what the win is. In one sentence, the win is, I'm going to say something like, you lead from a values-based position. Is that about right? How would you describe it in
I
a
think
sentence?
that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
I'll
leading
quote
from
you on that later.
yeah, there you go. So leading from a values-based place, and we can hear all the hard work that it takes to get in there. So now what I jump into is what I call the anatomy of a win, to have a little bit more thorough conversation about it, where we explore
Sure.
the strategy, the work plan, the people, the operations and results behind being a values-based leader in a values-based organization. So what's the strategy? So when we think about strategy, funny enough, values are part of strategy. Vision, mission, depending on what you put in play, goals, these
Sure.
things, these are strategic. What's the strategic highlight for taking this approach?
So I think first and foremost is to let it grow organically and to let it grow as, you know, something that comes from everybody. It is I would find it challenging to be able to buy into something or to feel like I belonged if I didn't contribute. Now, that being said, we've onboarded new people since those values were put in place when I joined the organization 8 years ago. And like you said, we use them for just about everything. We use them even when we're talking, even when we're interviewing people or just having meetings with people about what our organization is. So the strategy um, really around being um, leading through values or leaning on our values to lead is really about recognizing what they are, recognizing what they mean, and then developing, you know, the longer term strategy for the organization, developing that mission and that vision. And your mission may change. Your vision probably shouldn't because it's much further out there and much more aspirational. The value propositions change every once in a while, although I would argue, having, you know, spent the first half of my career in communications and branding, that Mr. Christie has been making good cookies for a really long time. Uh, those things may change. Strategically, when you set your values, they shouldn't. They should weather every storm. They should be a part of every celebration. And they should be that guy. I think you used the word beacon. They should, I think they end up being that bedrock, if you will. I know I keep using foundation and bedrock. So when we're developing strategy around values, it is making sure that we are incorporating them into not only the strategic direction or the strategic plan for the organization, uh, we leverage them into the team culture. We leverage them into the organizational culture. Um, Even with the board, it's when we're building board tools, when we're building policies or procedures or all of those things, it's about having that as a bit of a filter and a lens for how we go forward. a big part of, we're a member-based, member-driven organization, so we want our members to influence the agenda at CSAE, and having a solid set of values allows us to move forward and guide in the way that we want to. Innovation and creativity. What's the next best thing? Everybody's talking about AI. It's not the next best thing. It's been around for a really long time. Technology changes every 20 minutes. I'm not a tech person, but we're open to exploration and being curious and looking at those innovative pieces. So that's where that's making a difference, on the inclusivity side, introducing employee policies that do just that. For example, we have a policy at CSAE where our statutory holidays are set. They're set by the government for every organization. And we allow through an employee policy, our team members to change out 5 of those stat holidays for other times that are of greater personal significance. So that is a way that we lean on the values or leverage the values and looked at what's really important to our team as we start to develop certain things. So that would be an example of some of the strategies that are employed in it. And it's not just in terms of the strategic direction of the organization, although I suppose all of those examples could bubble up into that. But it is sort of an overarching philosophy which drives the strategy or the strategies for the organization, for members, for volunteers, for the team, etc.
Well said. I love that you've given us we've got this overarching look at things, which can often get up in the clouds, but you put that into a concrete thing. Wait a second, we're going to because we have values that connect to our people, we're going to allow them to then use that to actually get something done. So now we've got a really good feel of all those different uses of the values and how important that's been as you've been going forward. Anytime we have a strategy, we always need a work plan. There's a moment in time when the values maybe weren't there. I'm going to guess, I don't know what year that would have been. And then you start the process of what you described, which is organically developing. What year did the values kind of kick off to kind of get put in place?
They really, I joined CSE in the summer of 2017, so I'm 8 years old. And I really started looking at what was foundational to the organization. So they started to emerge and take shape fairly early in 2018. And because we wanted the process to be inclusive, we started actually with the team. And then we went to the board, and then we took it to a leaders forum, which had an abundance of volunteers and people that were intrinsically involved in the organization. And when we started with the team, then we brought the board in. It wasn't to rewrite them. We were very specific about not asking for permission. I'm not asking this to be rewritten. I'm asking if there are any flags here as a different set of eyes. Does this work for you? When you swallow it, how does it feel? What's the gut check on it? Does it work? And that's the way we brought that whole process through the multiple levels of the organization. And so leveraging my memory, I'm only 8 years old. So it was the fall of 2018. We had a conference in Ottawa, and we had what we used to refer to as the leaders forums. They've since changed. The great disruptor changed a lot of things. And it was there that they really sort of became concrete for for the organization.
So you're 8 years old. We're 2018. There's a new leader. There's a new way to go at things. So there's an initiative there. You take that initiative. Let's take a look. Let's break these down. Let's work with our team. I love the pathway that you've described that other leaders can listen to this podcast and go, wait a second. Oh, I have the permission for our staff to form them. I don't need permission from the board. Isn't that interesting as a way to sort of self-empower and sort of really the people on the ground doing the work
Yeah.
create that formation. It creates that buy-in. You understand that obviously from previous leadership scenarios that we could talk on and on about why that's
Yeah.
important, but now you've gotten them to stick over that period of time. So give yourself 8 years and you can get really cool values foundationally in place. And it does take time. It's not an instant thing. So thank you for describing again the beginning of the process to get us to where we are now, because we've
Yeah.
heard so much about how good it is now. Whenever we
Yeah.
have a win, we've got strategy, work plan, we've got people involved, people and their attitudes. How would you describe yourself in 2018? You said you're just getting born. How would you describe yourself and your attitude at the beginning of this process? And how has your attitude been an influence on getting these values to stick?
Wow. That's a great question. Um, I was really excited coming into the organization. I'd known about the organization for a long time. I was brought in as a bit of a change agent. The board was making some changes. The organization itself was changing. The reality is, a lot of people don't like the word change, or we hear change and we're yikes. And I was raised in a household where change is something that you embrace. So because through change come opportunities. And so I was really excited to get to CSAE, to get on the inside and just really take some time to learn the team, to learn the people, and then to learn the membership and who the volunteers are, including the board. And so it was just a really exciting time. The fact that we didn't have some of that information, we didn't have any member research or any member data when I got there, and hadn't for quite some time. And that's not a criticism. That is just, people do things differently and we all bring different strengths to the table. Mine happens to be, I really believe in culture and the development of solid culture, and because I think that culture is what um I think it's that essence of how people come together and how they show up for each other helps you go forward. And that for me personally leans on my core values as well, which are very aligned with the values that we were able to set up for the organization. So I remember those early days of excitement and so much to learn, and drinking from the fire hose and trying to get all of those pieces together. I'm grateful for the foundation that I was raised with, because throughout my career, it has been, a bit of it is not a bit of, it has been a large part of, how I guide myself and how I show up and how I am in the world and how I want to be in the world. Now, I work on that all the time. You'll note that when I said who I am or how I describe myself, I always say an aspiring do-gooder. I try to leave the world a better place every day than the day before. So that being said, where I'm at now is, the values really helped us get through the lockdown times, and it was common ground that we could share. We would meet on Zoom often, as everybody else in the world did, and we would pull out the values and we would talk about we would do some of those exercises that I mentioned earlier. What does it mean for you? Is it showing up? Is it not showing up? Where are we challenged with it? Because that's, everything can't be great 100% of the time. And so, we've transitioned through that. We find ourselves again now on the post pandemic and post pandemic economy, with a lot of momentum on our side with the changes that have been made going forward. And so I am equally excited today as I was back in 2017, 2018, that we have such a solid base from which to grow and improve from. The other thing that I was raised with, and that we really do believe at CSAE, it used to be part of the strategic direction, used to be part of the strategic plan at CSAE. And then we just, in a review of the strat plan earlier this year, we realized that we didn't need it to be a strategic pillar. It is one of continuous improvement. Right? People don't like the word change, but we are always evolving. We are always changing. We should always be, trying new things, willing to not always get it right, and willing to learn when we don't. And so that's sort of the area that we're in right now, with a lot of momentum coming from our membership and our partners, and the association sector on a whole, which is key to the fabric of Canadian society. So it's still I still come to work with an abundance of enthusiasm 97% of the time.
And 97, I love it. And thank you for Canadian society, because we can hear that value set. The leaders that are coming on the podcast, I'm hearing that often. Nick Nanos was on. He talks about doing objective research to help hold the democracy together. Like, I mean, it's pretty
Yes.
amazing to think about leaders having that perspective in their pockets,
Yeah.
and bringing that to the table. So it's big. It's bigger than me, bigger than the organization, bigger than what we're all doing.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I love that.
Absolutely.
So you're a key person, and we can hear your attitude in spades there as we go forward. I just need to get a brief maybe look at the team, because new guy walks into a situation and the team's not always, you know what I mean? There's a little get to know each other here. So how would you describe, I'm just going to work with the team part just as one other piece of the puzzle for people, but how would you describe their attitude initially, and then how has it evolved?
You know what? Whenever you interview somebody, I don't know about you, I'm sure the audience will relate to this. Whenever you interview somebody, they always ask, well, what's the culture? And when they ask me that, I always say, ask the other people that interviewed you, because I know what I see it as. Um, and um, I'm not so naive as to not check in with the team, regardless of level. And relatively, we're a well-sized organization, but we are not massive by any shakes. It's a smaller team. Um, and so when we bring someone new in, in the interview process, I'm usually the last person who gets to meet the people that are coming in. And I talk about the values and the culture of the organization. Um, so, um, and then when someone joins us, when they're new, there's so much for them to learn. So I give them that piece of information. I think it really lives or becomes evident when they start to meet and develop their relationships with all of the other members of the team, um, who are there who are always hugely welcoming and supportive and eager to welcome someone into the fold, and um, and just always be there. I can't tell you how many times I hear, just call me if you need me. Oh, I'll do, I can tell you anything. And that could come from the manager of education who works largely on the CAE program to, a new coordinator who's come in on the event side. So you see it at play with individuals that way. And so I see it when someone new comes in and they embrace that new person. I see it when, someone goes off to start a family. I see it when, people sadly sometimes leave us. And there, I think a lot of it is because we talk about the values and we leverage them. Not it's not like a chalkboard with with the stick and the pointer and this is it. We talk about it in a way that it just becomes organic to part of the conversation. Um, and I see that with the team. And I don't know if any of us actually knowingly recognize that we do it, or if it just is a way that we are, and a way that we are, it's the way that we work with each other. It's just
Thank
such
you. Thank you so much for the humility that you have running through what you're grasping for right now. As in, I think I'm hearing, I'm not going to speak for the team, but this is what I think, this is my impression. And that really speaks to the nature of your leadership style. And we've heard a lot about yourself and then some of these other people that are involved. And obviously it's paying off because we're hearing this big practice. We talked about strategy, work plan, people, operationalizing values. That's operations, the fourth step. You've described a few already. You said, wait a second, we have this holiday thing. We're going to operationalize our values by allowing people to choose. We're going to onboard somebody. Last part of the interview is me talking about values. Like that, these are actual, tangible things. Any other sort of maybe one operational highlight to put these values into play that you might, I mean, if you've already mentioned it, that's great. But is there one that comes to mind that's different from what we talked about?
Yeah, we have a few things. So it's really, we talked a little bit about how do you get people to live these? How do you do that? Part of it is being together, and we're a fully distributed, 100% virtually operated organization now. So we don't have the benefit that I had in 2017, 2018, 2019 of being physically together all the time. So we purposely work to make sure that connectivity is happening with the team so that they can support each other, so that they can collaborate with each other, so that they do know what teamwork looks like, even though, someone could be in Montreal and someone could be in Ilderton, Ontario, outside of London, which is in fact the case. So, um, a couple of things that we do, and I think we do it quite well because we intentionally work at it. We set up. We use a virtual platform that sort of simulates when you're in it. There are little tables. People sit at different tables. Kind of replicates the office. If I need to go and talk to, my marketing manager, I just go over to her table and double click on an empty seat. And like magic, all of a sudden she and I are on the screen like you and I are now. So, and then we can have a conversation, and I can do the same thing if I'm going over to talk to membership. It's this great platform. We call it the CSAE Cafe, and we do require that everybody works out of the cafe on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings from 9 to 11. Now, if you've got meetings, you go to your meeting. If you're busy on a phone call and someone knocks on your door and tries to come into your room, you just don't answer, and that's fine. There's all sorts of ways for us to communicate, but it kind of, people get together on a Monday morning just to sit at a table to say, how was your weekend? What did you do this weekend? People will get together on Friday morning to say, what are you doing? So that's one of the things that we do. The other thing that we did, that we started in 2020, when we were all in lockdown time and everybody was exhausted and, hands were really tired from clenching onto whatever we could hold on to, is we moved to a 4.5 day work week with no penalties. You're still paid for the full 5 days. We have looked at a 4-day work week, and we may move to that at some point. Right now, the 4.5 works. A lot of people like to check in on the Friday. So having that half day where they can check in on members, they get, whatever. And then lastly, another thing that we did was, rather than saying to our members or our constituents or anybody who may need to get in touch with us from a team perspective, rather than putting the pressure on to say we're available between 9 and 5 or 8 and 4 or whatever the old in-person hours used to be, it's not realistic when you're operating virtually. So giving people the flexibility to monitor their own schedules and to work from home in a way that works for them and their life. We changed our language, and we said to our members, we'll respond to you within 48 hours. That doesn't include the weekend. 48 business hours, we'll get back to you. So it took away that pressure of, I have to be seated from 9 to 5, but I'm working from home and it would be really great to throw a little laundry in. Or, my little is getting off the bus at 3:30 and I'd really like to meet the bus, bring them home, give them a snack, set them up with whatever it is they're going to do for the next 40 minutes while I finish out my workday. So we've created an environment and a culture that allows for that flexibility, that that everybody's searching for that work-life balance. Do we get it right all the time?
And that's reflecting your values, right?
Yes,
Going back to
exactly.
the values, which is a fantastic thing. And I'll bet you the folks in their 4.5 days are more productive than they were in 5. Those Friday afternoons after 2 can drag on. You're also being realistic in your continuous improvement that I'm hearing by adapting to current culture.
You
Post-COVID
got
is
it.
a big hit for all of us, and to go to this remote thing, nice thing for your members, saves you on whatever it is, operating costs. But in the meantime, you have to develop a remote workforce, and that's got its own thing. But the values are allowing the remote workforce to thrive. This is
Exactly.
great. We could talk for hours. This is so
I
good.
could.
I'm just going to get down to the last step here, which is results, qualitative and quantitative. We talked about the strategy, the work plan, people, operations. There's results. How would you describe the results that come from these, the win, which is to practice these values? And so quantitative, I'm going to say things like, I don't know if you're actually measuring, but I'm going to say, is it more productive? Do you see links there? And then qualitative, there might be some as well. Any highlights in the results that you see from practicing these values?
I think from a quantitative perspective, we see people really dedicated to the organization, really committed to the organization because they can commit to something that they believe in. And and it's not just the values that they believe in. They believe in what the organization stands for and what the organization does. So there's that piece. I think um the on the qualitative side, the qualifiers are things like um this is going to sound really small and not at all evidence or scientifically based. When we're together in the team and we say, okay, so we're going to start, we don't tell them what we're going to start with. I'll just say, so, what's your favorite value? And any member of the team can pull out one of their favorite values. Or how have you seen I mentioned it earlier. How have you seen the values in play? And they pull out an example of, I was on a committee. I was on the whatever committee that we have lots of them, but I was with my committee working on this, and the collaboration on the committee was just like nothing I've ever seen. Those are anecdotal for sure. And because we don't actually measure it. We do I shouldn't say that, because we do measure through employee engagement surveys and then follow up interviews and stuff. We also have a pretty open, if I do say so myself, it's a pretty open door or open video policy. Thanks to technology, you can call someone pretty readily or whatever. And so I see a lot of that in action. And I think those are the pieces that make me most proud. The other thing that I will say is we haven't had a lot of turnover. We've had change. And I say this, last year we had 4 of the original team, the almost original team that I worked with, leave. They left after 8 years, 7 years, 6 years, and 5 years, respectively. And all of them went somewhere, all of them went to the next level. So someone's running an association, someone who was a specialist is now a manager, that kind of thing. And so while I never want anyone to go, I would never stand in their way. I would always be supportive. If I don't have the position for them, then I'll help them go wherever they want to go. That says something to me, that they hung in for a very long time, particularly when we see a lot of employment gigs can often be very transactional now versus I'm going to say it, versus my parents' generation. I won't use myself, I'll use them as an example. So when you see that and you watch people grow and you watch them take with them the pieces that really made a difference for them at the organization, or the folks that are still with us, or the new folks that are coming in who can really embrace it, then you know that there's something there
I can
that
hear it. I can hear the continuity from how you were raised on through to what you're doing at your work, on through to sending people out in the world.
Yeah.
That are, again, we talked about that Canadian, Canada, world proposition, humanity proposition. Again, we could go on and on about all the
Yeah.
layers that are in here. This has been outstanding. I think any leader that, wants sort of, again, a masterclass in why values are important, when they listen to this, they're going to get it. If you had a couple
Thanks.
sentences and
Mhm.
you were speaking to a leader about the importance of values, give me a couple sentences just to close us out here as we get to the end that you would like to pass along to other leaders about why.
Let the values be developed by the people, not just by yourself. Let it become an organic process. And then when you land on them, lean into them, lean on them, and make sure that they are instilled in everything that you do. I think that's fundamental. People can't buy in. They don't feel like they belong unless there's something. And when new people come in, if they're strong enough, then those new people buy into them because it informs how you're bringing people in. So as a leader, um, I would say a lot of it is follow your gut. Let it happen, and it doesn't have to happen from you. It can happen from the people that you're there to support and lead. I think that's leadership.
Tracy, how lucky to have you here. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much. This has been a great deal of fun. I'm really glad that we got to do it. I so appreciate your time and letting me, have more than one sentence, because that would be almost impossible, as you've already gathered. Thanks, Gord.
Build your values with your team and put them into action in every aspect of your work. Well, that is how Tracy Folkes Hanson and her team win every day. Thank you, Tracy, for your inspiring win. Now, if you enjoyed listening to this episode, then make sure to check out our upcoming episodes, which include how to win with integrity and innovation in a 100-year-old organization. And that's with Nick Grimshaw, the CEO of Commissionaire's Northern Alberta Division. And if you are a leader who really wants to learn how the Executive Wins coaching session can help you to grow your confidence and inspire your team, then visit executivewins.com to learn how. You can also subscribe to the Executive Wins monthly newsletter to stay up to date on the podcast, live events, education opportunities, and more. Visit executivewins.com/newsletter to sign up. And if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe, and share it with a fellow leader. And don't forget to check out our resources and links in the show notes. And keep listening to the Executive Wins podcast for more inspiring wins that will help you to grow yourself, your team, and your entire business. Thanks for listening to the Executive Wins podcast. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe as we bring you more inspiring wins from outstanding leaders so you can grow your business.